An ambulance came rushing in. Inside, a child caught between life and death. But there, no one could do anything. The entire hospital was down. Doctors in a panic, equipment frozen, and no one could fix it. While doctors argued, patients cried, and lives slipped through their fingers. A 13-year-old black boy sat silently in the corner of the waiting room, watching it all. He could fix it. He knew exactly what to do, but who would believe him? Who would listen to the grandson of a simple nurse when prejudice spoke louder than any truth? But that day, that boy decided to challenge the impossible and prove that justice has no age, no degree, and no color. What happened next will take your breath away. Stick with me, and you'll never forget this story. The sound of the siren tore through the heavy afternoon air like a blade. The emergency doors of St. Gabriel Medical Center in North Charlotte, North Carolina, burst open, and the stretcher flew out of the ambulance like the ground was on fire. Two paramedics were running. One pushed the stretcher. The other shouted, voice trembling, male patient, 9 years old. Head trauma, fell from the Valley Bridge, unconscious on arrival. The boy was pale, struggling to breathe, dried blood on his face, eyes closed. The driver shouted as he cleared a path through reception, while the triage team jumped up in a rush. But nothing happened. No one moved. Where's the patient's file? What beds are open? Surgery. Pediatric ICU, doctor. The system crashed. The silence that followed was louder than any alarm. The chief physician stepped up to the central station, clutching his coat. Crashed how? Everything. It won't load. No access, no login. We've already tried rebooting 3 times. Little by little, the scale of the disaster began to show. At St. Gabriel, everything was digital. Heart monitors stopped sending signals to the main screens. Automatic infusion pumps froze at their last settings. Surgical wing doors with biometric access stayed locked. Anesthesia machines, ultrasound, X-ray, even the pediatric ICU's oxygen panel. All of it depended on the internal network. And now, nothing was responding. Someone called tech support. Now, we did. They're looking into it. The stretcher was still there. The boy gasping for air. His mother crying beside him, holding a dirt-stained school backpack. There was no time. After minutes of trial and error, a decision was made. The boy would be transferred to another hospital. But everyone knew what that meant. 20 more minutes on the road, without proper stabilization. It was a race against the clock and against death. When the ambulance took off again, its siren cutting through the building like a scream, no one could look anyone in the eye. Doctors blamed IT. IT blamed the third-party provider. Nurses shouted. Families demanded answers. Patients lost control in line. Inside the hospital, the chaos wasn't just technical, it was human. And while the world crumbled under shouting voices and useless protocols, someone was watching. Sitting on a wooden bench, half hidden behind potted plants in the reception area, a 13-year-old black boy stared at the dark hospital screen with the calm of someone who knows more than they let on. His name was Elijah, and no one there had any idea why that boy was there or what he was capable of doing. A month ago, Elijah left everything behind. The backpack still had his mom's cane hanging from it, 2 pairs of sneakers she had picked out herself, and a notebook full of drawings. That only made sense to him. That's how he crossed the country, from California to Charlotte, trying to understand how the world could keep turning without her in it. His mother's name was Danielle. She was in her early 30s, worked as a teaching assistant at a tech university, and always seemed to be in a hurry, like she somehow knew she wouldn't have much time. She was the kind who laughed loud, encouraged questions, and told her son, almost every day, "You have the kind of curiosity that changes the world, Elijah." Since he was little, She used to bring him to campus whenever she couldn't find someone to watch him. While she taught, Elijah wandered the hallways and later, the labs, staring at computers bigger than he was. The tech team got to know him, and one of Danielle's friends, a systems professor, grew fond of the boy. When Danielle found out the cancer had come back, and this time, there wasn't much they could do, she went to that professor with tears in her eyes, but a steady voice, "Teach my son. Let him work with the systems. Give that to him while I'm still here." And that's exactly what he did. In those final months, Elijah spent nearly every afternoon at the university. He learned commands, logic, network architecture. He learned to feel systems like living things and how to decode them. But no line of code taught Elijah how to lose his mother. After the funeral, he went days without saying a word. He quietly accepted he'd be moving in with his grandmother. But inside, everything in him was screaming. Now, in a new city, in a bedroom that didn't smell like her, and in a world that just kept spinning like nothing had happened, Elijah was trying to do just one thing: not forget, not who she was, and not who he was when she was still around. The hospital became routine before Elijah even memorized the way there. Every day after school, he took the bus and got off 2 blocks early just so he wouldn't draw attention. He'd enter through the back, where the staff parked, and walk through the halls with his eyes on the floor. He waited for his grandma to finish her shift, always in the same spots, the empty cafeteria at 4 o'clock, or a bench next to the reception desk where no one ever sat. He'd draw, observe, count how many times the login screen froze at the IT station. He knew the exact time the admissions system would crash. He even knew which employee spilled coffee on the same corner of the counter every single day. But no one knew anything about him. It was like Elijah had learned how to disappear. He stayed quiet, listened to everything, and only answered when someone asked him something directly. And almost no one did, until one random afternoon, someone sat down next to him with a lunch tray and said, "Have you noticed the reception computer blinks every time someone tries to access the lab results system?" Elijah looked up, surprised. It was Leon. Young, maybe mid-20s, wearing a slightly wrinkled white uniform, sharp eyes, a nurse who seemed to notice more than he let on. "I think the issue's not at the front desk," Elijah said softly. "It's probably in the path between the server and the authentication panel." Leon smiled. "I figured you were studying this. Saw you drawing motherboards the other day." And in that moment, something shifted. Leon didn't ask where Elijah was from, didn't ask why he was there every day. He just saw Elijah, and for some reason Elijah couldn't even explain. He let himself be seen. It was supposed to be just another busy shift at St. Gabriel Medical Center. But that morning, something felt off. Their schedule was already packed before 7. There were 2 deliveries expected, 1 transplant scheduled, and, at least for patients in observation with unstable conditions. The hospital, one of the most advanced in the region, relied almost entirely on its central management system: medications, triage, lab work, medical records, real-time monitoring. Everything ran through the integrated network. Everything had to work. But the technician on duty that day, a guy recently hired by an outsourced IT company, wasn't ready for what was coming. He showed up with deep bags under his eyes, headphones around his neck, and a spreadsheet full of pending tasks. An urgent email from the tech center was waiting for him. Optimize the server response time, which had been overloaded for days, without support from the core team, who were off that weekend. He decided to run an automated update right in the middle of peak hours. The protocol was risky, but he trusted the system, or maybe he just didn't want to look inexperienced. At first, everything seemed fine. Load times improved. The login screen responded instantly, but 10 minutes later, Warning lights started blinking. A reboot loop froze access to medical records. The imaging system stopped responding, and the automated backups poorly configured ended up corrupting temporary data hospital-wide. Within 20 minutes, the entire hospital was down. The technician tried to undo it, tried to restore, but the more he tried, the deeper he sank. Until he disappeared. Witnesses say he left his badge on the IT desk and walked out without saying a word. Others didn't even see him go. What he left behind was chaos. Patients without charts, doctors without access to test results, infusion pumps offline, deliveries suspended. At that exact moment, Leon was rushing through the halls trying to help an elderly woman in hypertensive crisis, and Elijah, the 13-year-old black boy, sat in the waiting room, already understanding exactly what was coming. No one else knew yet, but the system was crashing. And with it, lives were about to start falling apart. The system was still frozen, the tech support line wasn't answering, and the entire hospital was spinning in circles, tripping over itself. That's when Elijah stood up from the chair. He'd been in for nearly an hour. He walked over to the main desk and waited. No one noticed him at first. He was just another small body in a crowded hallway. But then he spoke. "I can try to help." The maintenance tech, stressed and overwhelmed, didn't even look up. "You've gotta be kidding me. I know this kind of system. I've seen something like this before. I can show you where the bug is. Kid, do you know how many lives are at stake here? This isn't a video game." That's when Leon, the young white nurse, stepped in. He knows what he's talking about. The tech looked at him, surprised. "Who is he?" "Elijah. He stays here with his grandmother while she works. He's always watching the system, drawing the connections." At that moment, Mavis appeared. Calm face, firm posture. She had been looking for Elijah. "He's my grandson." Before anyone could say another word, one of the senior doctors, who'd been pressuring the tech team nearby, turned around, clearly irritated. White, crisp lab coat, a look used to being obeyed. "With all due respect, Nurse Mavis, we're dealing with a serious crisis here. And what you're bringing us is your grandson." Silence. She opened her mouth to respond, but the doctor kept going. "Please understand, it's already hard enough to stay in control with this lack of technical support. And now we're considering the input of a child, the grandson of a nurse, a boy with no academic background, no clearance, no credentials." Mavis clenched her fists. He studied under a professor at UC Berkeley since he was a kid. His mother worked there. The doctor raised his eyebrows. "Berkeley," he repeated, letting out a quiet chuckle. "Oh really? And now he's going to save the hospital? Sorry, but we can't put our faith in every touching little story that walks through the door." He paused, locking eyes with Mavis. "Especially when it comes from people like you." The words cut like a blade. It wasn't just about Elijah. It wasn't just about his age. It was about who they were and where they came from. Leon stepped forward, but Mavis held up her hand to stop him. She took a breath, looked at her grandson, and said firmly, "Then someone here, fix it, or you can keep letting children die because you won't listen to a 13-year-old black boy." This time, no one said a word, because no one knew how to fix it, and deep down, they all knew she was right. While the team argued over solutions, and no one actually did anything, Mavis made her move, slowly, with the steady resolve of someone who's spent a lifetime being ignored. She stepped beside her grandson, placed a hand on his shoulder, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "If no one here knows how to fix it, then let him try." Every eye turned to her like weapons. Someone let out a mocking laugh. Another whispered, "This has got to be a joke." But Leon stepped forward. He'd been standing near the break room and now approached with conviction. "I saw this kid near the IT hub the other day. He was sketching the system. He knows what he's talking about. The company tech shook his head. This goes against every protocol. Mavis replied without hesitation. What goes against protocol is letting children die out of pride. The chief physician, the same one who'd humiliated Elijah minutes earlier, crossed his arms. If this boy causes more damage, the blame will fall entirely on you. With all due respect, doctor, do what you must. Mavis replied, I stand by the grandson I raised. The talent I watched grow, and the risk of believing when no one else has the courage to. Leon nodded beside her. The responsibility will be ours. The tension in the hallway was thick as smoke. Some staff stepped back. Others stared at Elijah like he was walking trouble. But there, between two adults who chose to say yes, he found a space and stepped into it. Mavis walked with him to the door of the control room. Leon kept a watchful eye behind them. Patient screams still echoed in the distance, crossed orders, blaring alarms, voices desperate to be heard. But the silence between the three of them was a pact. You can do this, Mavis said. Do it your way, Leon added. And remember who you are. Elijah took a deep breath, scanned the dark room, and even with disapproving eyes all around him, he took the first step. Elijah had barely stepped into the control room when he heard footsteps behind him. Hey, what's that kid doing in there? Two maintenance supervisors, wearing green ID badges, rushed down the hallway. One of them was already raising his radio. Call security. This is a breach. No, a breach is letting this hospital die from the inside out. Mavis's voice cut through the hallway like a scalpel. She stepped in right behind her grandson, with Leon at her side. He knows what he's doing. Let him try. You're taking responsibility for this, the tech shouted. Leon nodded firmly. Yes, we are. A furious doctor appeared in the doorway. This violates every safety protocol in the institution. He's just a kid. Mavis didn't flinch. And you're grown adults who failed. Elijah didn't say a word. He just sat down, adjusted the chair, and placed his fingers on the keyboard. On the screen, the system interface flashed red, a maze of broken commands, corrupted lines, and frozen processes. I'm going to create a parallel instance, Elijah said, almost whispering. Then I'll manually reboot the core protocols and reroute virtual memory. If I bypass the update failure, the system should stabilize. The techs glanced at each other. You're gonna do what? But his fingers were already flying. With astonishing speed, Elijah typed line after line of code, switched between windows, scanned logs, and pinpointed the critical failures like he'd done it 100 times. Mavis stood behind him, chest lifted, eyes glassy. Leon held his breath with every step forward. And outside, a nurse shouted to women in labor, we need that room ready. The minutes dragged. The tension was unbearable. Until the sound, a soft beep, sharp and short. Then another. Then dozens. The machines began to restart. Monitors slowly lit up with vital signs. Screens loaded patient records. The system, once in full collapse, was starting to breathe again. Outside, the elevators opened to take the laboring mothers upstairs, and shortly after, two new lives entered the world. Inside, Elijah exhaled slowly through his mouth, as if only now he was allowing his own body to let go. And someone, in the back of the room, whispered, was that him? Yes. It was. The control room, now packed with people, fell into a silence no one quite knew how to explain. It wasn't just surprise. It wasn't just relief. It was something else. It was shame. It was quiet admiration. It was the exact moment when arrogance collapsed in the face of the impossible. Some of the people who had mocked Elijah now couldn't meet his eyes. Others tried to justify it in hushed tones. Maybe it was just luck. He must have trained with someone Someone had to be helping him. But standing in the center of the room, Mavis knew better. She walked toward her grandson slowly, didn't say a word, just knelt down in front of him, took his hands and smiled. "Your mother would be so proud of you, Elijah." Her voice cracked but held steady. So proud. He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. His throat tightened. His eyes filled up. And when he finally broke down in tears, it wasn't from fear. It was for everything that came before. For every time they tried to silence him. For every time they looked past him. For every piece of his mother he carried that no one ever saw. He cried for love, for loss, for presence. Leon stood near the door, eyes glistening. And to floors above, neonatologists welcomed two newborns into the world. Their mothers exhausted, but safe. Both babies had just been born. Both were alive. Because the system came back in time. Because a 13-year-old black boy, dismissed by almost everyone, refused to accept a barrier as his fate. Elijah looked at Mavis, eyes still wet. Nodded. And said softly, "Can I go home now?" 2 days after the chaos, the same press that had reported the collapse of St. Gabriel Medical Center returned to the building. This time, not to accuse, but to listen. The conference room was full, cameras rolling, journalists from national outlets. On the back, hospital staff, doctors, nurses, admin workers, and members of the board. At the center of the stage, the hospital's director, Dr. Helena Cortez, adjusted the papers in front of her and began. "First and foremost, we thank you all for being here. We're here today to clarify, with complete transparency, the events of last Saturday, when a critical failure in our central system compromised the operation of our hospital and nearly ended in tragedy." She cleared her throat, kept her tone steady. "After an internal investigation, we confirmed that the problem was caused by an automated update run by a substitute employee from our contracted IT company, without proper validation from our senior technical team. We've formally notified the company, and the contract has been terminated. A new provider has already been hired. Additionally, starting this week, we're launching an internal digital safety committee made up of permanent staff who will monitor the network in real time and revise all emergency protocols." Camera clicks, rapid scribbling, a low murmur in the room. Then, the director paused and looked toward the second row of the audience. There, quietly seated, was Elijah Johnson. Beside him sat his grandmother, Mavis, posture upright, and next to her, Leon, still in uniform. The director took a deep breath. "But no technical explanation will ever be enough without a human one as well. That's why I now turn the floor over to Dr. Richard Gaines, head of our emergency department." Silence. Dr. Gaines, white, navy blue, tie, visibly shaken, stood slowly. He held a folded sheet of paper, but quickly set it aside. "I made a mistake." His voice was steady, but his eyes were already misting over. "That day, I was tired, stressed, afraid of losing patients. But none of that, absolutely none of it, justifies what I said. When Nurse Mavis's grandson offered to help, I didn't listen. Because what I saw was a 13-year-old black boy who didn't fit what I, or many of us, are used to calling authority." He paused, looked directly at Elijah. "I questioned his worth. I judged his abilities, his background. And to be completely honest, I judged the color of his skin. Maybe I didn't say it out loud. But the message was there, between the lines. That's racism. And I'm not proud of it." The room fell silent. No one moved, not even the cameras shook. Dr. Gaines continued, "I'm not the one who gets to make this right. But today, in front of everyone here, I can say I'm sorry. To you, Elijah. To your grandmother. To every young black person who's silenced in the background every single day. You saved this hospital, and I nearly stopped you." He turned back to the audience. "If this apology can mean anything, let it be a mirror. For me, for my colleagues, for anyone who still hasn't realized that brilliance has no zip code, no last name, no skin tone." The applause came like a wave, first quiet, then strong. Some stood up. Dr. Helena Cortez returned to the microphone, her voice tight with emotion. "Thank you, Dr. Gaines. And now, with great pride, I announce that St. Gabriel Medical Center, in partnership with the State University, will award Elijah Johnson a full scholarship for a research program in hospital technology." The auditorium applauded again. "We also announce that Mavis Johnson will be promoted to head nurse in recognition of her ethics, courage, and vision. And that Leon Rivers, a nurse on our team, will receive a special bonus for his exemplary conduct and decisive support at a critical moment." Elijah didn't say a word, but beside him, Mavis squeezed his hand like she was holding an entire legacy. Outside, the journalists crowded around him. They wanted a statement. He just gave a slight smile and said, "I didn't do this to be seen. But now that you're looking, I hope you look closely. And I hope you see everyone who goes through what I did here." And then he walked away with his grandmother, hand in hand, with simple steps, and with the quiet dignity of someone who never needed to prove he belonged. By the next morning, photos and videos from the press conference were everywhere. Headlines and captions read things like, "Doctor apologizes for racism toward black boy who saved hospital, 13-year-old genius recognized after reversing critical system failure at U.S. hospital." Images of Elijah, wearing his hoodie, sitting beside his grandmother, went viral within minutes. On social media, his name was trending. In educator circles, his story became an example. And among the thousands of comments, one quiet message arrived. By email, sender, Professor Mitchell Alvarez, Berkeley School of Computing. "Elijah, I saw you. I saw your talent from the first day you walked into that lab with your mother. I saw how your eyes lit up, not just at the code, but at the way you understood the world differently. You would have been proud. So proud, and I am too. And I'm still here, as I've always been. To listen, to guide you, to remind you, you don't have to prove anything. But if you want to, the world is listening." Now, Elijah read the message 3 times. He didn't reply. He just smiled. And that night, as he turned off the light in his room, he whispered to himself, for the first time in a long time, "I'm doing okay. Mom, I'm doing okay." Elijah didn't just save a hospital. He saved lives. By breaking silences, facing stares, and calmly, courageously dismantling everything they said he could never be. But this isn't just about him. It's about how many other Elijahs are out there, with talent, with a voice, with brilliance, and with doors slammed shut because they don't fit the right profile. It's also about those who choose to open those doors, like Mavis, like Leon, like anyone who decides to truly see. Because the world doesn't change all at once, but it does change when someone chooses not to look away. And if this story moved you in any way, leave a comment below. Tell us what touched you the most, or who your Elijah might be. Subscribe to the channel to keep feeding your hope. Here, every story has a soul, and every soul deserves to be heard and respected.